Well, for those of you who maybe don't know me, my name's Ian White, and I'm the fella who's got the honour of being president of Green Bums Club, the Mother Club. We're having this particular meeting this evening, this club night this evening, in the format that we're having it, because coming into my presidency, we had discovered last year that the Zoom system was good to keep us all in touch with one another and to even run a couple of club nights last year. And it struck me that it would be good, just as part of the regular syllabus, to include a couple this year. So earlier on in the session, Alan gave us a wonderful talk. Some of you were on it on Colin Ray Brown. And now this evening, we have the second of the Zoom talks. And of course, the title is Robert Burns and some other Scottish poets. And this takes us to that part of our constitution where it talks about us not only respecting and holding Burns in reverence, but also other aspects of Scottish culture. And I said in the flyer that went out, there was going to be some surprises. And this is it. Some of you have seen the running order, which says the President's welcome. What it didn't say was that to kick the show off this evening, the President, unusually for him, is going to do a wee turn. And I am going to be speaking about a Scottish poet, writer, songwriter, bard, comedian that has been part of my life since I was in my late teens. That's a gentleman who was part of the folk revival in Scotland in the 60s and the 70s. And the gentleman's name is Matt McGinn. And some of you may have heard of Matt McGinn. If you haven't, you're going to hear a wee bit more about him just now. Matt was born in the East End of Glasgow in the Carlton area in 1928. And he passed away tragically in 1977, very young age, under 50. He was the 8th child of 9 in the family. And unfortunately, his formal regular education stopped when he was sent to put into an approved school for being a bad boy. And he was there until school leaving age. And after he left school, he worked in several places. He worked in a factory that made bolts and screw nails in Hillington, GKN. He worked as a storeman in Harland and Wolff's in Govan. But as time went by, he became more famous as a speaker and a debater, particularly politically, in support of people on the left wing. He was said to be a highly charismatic debater. Ultimately, at the age of 31, he gained a trade union scholarship, which took him to Ruskin College in Oxford, where he studied, and thereafter took teacher training in Huddersfield and come back to Scotland and was an art teacher in Lanarkshire for 3 years before becoming organiser of the Gorbals Children's Adventure Playground. His career in music really took off in the folk revival, and he was a prolific writer, often writing about his own experiences, what he saw around about him, and about his beliefs. He was a bit of a character in the west of Scotland in these days, being a socialist, a Republican, and a member of the Communist Party of Great Britain. I heard him saying once that eventually they gave him a membership card which was perforated so that he could tear it up easily when they threw him out, which they did regularly. Billy Connolly and Tam Harvey used to accompany Matt McGinn, and they said that he was unique amongst folk singers in that he couldn't sing. And another accompanist of him, Billy Davidson, I heard saying the same thing. And he wrote one-liners, he wrote couplets, he wrote verses, he wrote poems, and he wrote songs. So some of these I'm going to just feature a wee bit about this evening as we get into the meat of the business. An example of one of his couplets: beware of those whose eyebrows meet, for it's generally a sign of sweaty feet. One of his, you're allowed to laugh, by the way. One of the verses that he wrote was, for Christmas, he bought her a wee diamond ring, but later it got him embarrassed. He forgot the first thing to go green in the spring was jewellery bought at the Barras. So humour ran through what he was writing. And my favourite poem of his is one that's pretty well known. It's about a town called Effin that he said was in France. But I have searched the internet high and low, and I can't find an Effin in France. I did find one yesterday in Southern Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland, in the county of Limerick. Anyway, I suspect that McGinn just made up this town in France to suit his own purposes when the inspiration came for the poem. He kept bees in the old town of Effin. An Effin beekeeper was he. And one day this Effin beekeeper gets stung by a big effing bee. Now, this big effing beekeeper's wee effing wife, for the big effing Polish she ran for, there's nobody can sort out a big effing bee like a big effing policeman can. Now, the big effing policeman, he did his nut and he ran down the main effing street. And his horn was a big effing baton. And he'd big effing boots in his feet. Now, the police got hawed with a big effing bee. And he twisted the effing bee's wings. But this big effing bee got his own back. For this big effing bee had 2 stings. Now, they're both in the effing museum, where the effing people often come see the remains of the big effing policeman stung to death by the big effing bee. And Bob, you obviously knew that one. And his songs, he literally hundreds of songs were written by McGinn, hundreds of songs. And they were usually inspired by his political beliefs or what he saw around him and people, what he saw around him in Glasgow. They could actually be many things. They could be philosophical, like his song, My Ego. Deep in my heart, or deep in my mind, deep in the depths of my ego, deep in my chest, there lies a treasure chest, one that only I can know. Or he wrote one based on the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, which, like me, some of you may have suffered studying in school. In, about, above, below, phantom figures come and go. It's the magic shadow show. Come, love, watch with me. They could be sentimental as well. He wrote for his wee daughter a lullaby. Coorie-doon, 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 my darling, coorie-doon a day. They could be humorous. Well, if you get Mark McGinn's kind of humour. For example, many of you remember, like me, when Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was a big deal in the cinema. And you'll remember that wonderful scene in it where Paul Newman's on the bike with a bowler hat on, singing "Raindrops Keep Falling in My Head." McGinn wrote a parody, "Screw taps keep falling on my head." Now, some of you'll remember the screw tap. Give me a wave if you can remember the screw tap. The screw tap was a wonderful big bottle of beer, which, as its name suggests, had a screw cap on the top. So that was known by one and all as a screw tap. And this song of McGinn's runs through a terrible doing that he got after the screw tap landed on his head in the pub. There was a time when Glasgow was really concerned about its image in terms of cleanliness or lack of it. And McGinn wrote a song, and the song was "Eat a Do a Day," because they had been particularly worried about the mess the pigeons were creating in George's Square. So the song was "Make Old Glasgow City Clean, Eat a Do a Day." And the Dundee ghost, "Oh, a deed man seldom walks, and he very rarely talks. It's not very often you see one running around, but I am a refugee for a graveyard in Dundee, and I've come to haunt some houses in Glasgow town. Oh, the reason I rose is to get myself some clothes, 'cause it can get hell of a cold below the grun." And on it goes. They could be observational as well, the difficulties that other people have in their chosen path in life. For those of you who are football fans, why did I ever become a football referee? I could have been an engineer or a sailor on the sea. Whenever there is fault to find, they always pick on me. Why did I ever become a football referee? And the song goes on to talk about terrific difficulties that this referee had in a Rangers, versus Celtic match. Not surprisingly, many of his songs were political. He was a great supporter of the UCS working at the time, and he wrote a song marching with Jimmy Reid and Airlie, which he did, of course. Another one was "Yes, Yes, It's the UCS." He wrote a song about the Scottish school teacher and socialist activist who was jailed in the First World War, John Maclean. And he wrote one, he was not surprisingly a member of the CND, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, and he wrote one on the march to Aldermaston. And he wrote one about the terrible riots that there were in the USA at the time of the Vietnam War, and the students objecting to the draft. It was "With fire and with sword, amen, amen. With fire and with sword, amen. With fire and with sword, here come the men o' war. Oh, the world must be coming to an end. They massacre the young, amen, amen. They massacre the young, amen. They massacre the young just to make them hold their tongues. Oh, the world must be coming to an end." Well, it seemed that way in the late 60s. And the way we are looking at it today, I think it maybe seems the same. He wrote a number of songs relating to work or work shyness. "I'm looking for a job with a sky-high pay, a 3-day week and a 4-hour day. It's maybe just because I was made that way, but I never did like being idle." And this song goes on. He talks about singing that song to the brew clerk and getting sent to Harlan's to get a job there, and about how unenamoured the gaffers were when he was putting forward his idea what a great job was. Or 3 nights and a Sunday double time. 3 nights and a Sunday double time. I work all day and I work all night. To hell with you, Jack, I'm all right. 3 nights and a Sunday double time. There's a fella down the street that I avoid. He's one of them they call the unemployed. They say it's all because of me. He can't get a job and I've got three nights and a Sunday double time. Or regarding the importance of the unions in terms of workers' pay and conditions. Tooraloo, I'll tell you something awfully true. You wouldn't hae, I tell you now, if it wasn't for the union. And finally, you'll be glad to hear my favourite. It's from my professional world. It relates a tale that's based on a real story. And it's got the magic that a children's song requires. You know, that way that it's just on the edge of possibility. Just on the edge that what's in it might possibly have happened. Wee Anne took her yo-yo, to school she did go, though she shouldn't hae ta'en it at all. It fell out her horn and it rolled on the grun, and it went through a hole in the wall. Have you seen a red yo-yo, red yo-yo, red yo-yo? Have you seen a red yo-yo with a wee yellow string? You know, this song was written after his daughter come home, his wee daughter come home from primary school. She had lost a button from her coat, and the button from the coat fell in the ground and rolled away. So the daring young Annie, she went to the Janny, a decent wee man as a rule, and it's pleasing to tell that he rang on his bell and he asked every one in the school. Now, what actually happened was she went to the janitor, who took her in turn, Isabel, to the head teacher, and the head teacher said that the announcement was to be made that in the school to find this button was to become a priority. The song, of course, for those of you who know it, goes on to say all the things that happened because the most important possession in this wee lassie's life was lost. And when I hear the song, I always think on the 6 or 7 year old wee lassie having lost the yo-yo. And it talks about all the people who search for it. Everybody's out the school chapping doors and asking people in the community. Of course, the police get to know, and the song says that they put all their murders aside. Such was the importance of this yo-yo. Word gets to Buckingham Palace to the Queen, who immediately phones President Johnson in America and says, we'll need to look for this yo-yo. And of course, ultimately, when Kosygin heard in the Kremlin, that was it. But the wonderful thing for me is the way that this song finishes, because it finishes with the best, most wonderful person in anyone's life, better even than a mammy. Frae Peking and Paris and all round the barras, the people they searched high and low, till finally Annie announced that her granny had bought her another yo-yo. And it was a red yo-yo, red yo-yo, red yo-yo. and it was a yo with a wee yellow string. Now, if you think about that song, how wonderful it is, in capturing the child's world. And that's why I love that song so much. But when it comes down to it, in McGinn, we had an ordinary man who was born of ordinary people, who got some education, who had a number of beliefs. He wasn't frightened to speak up for these beliefs. He wrote about those around him, about society around him, about his beliefs. He wrote songs, he wrote humorous stories. Ladies and gentlemen, he also was tragically taken from us far too soon. Does that remind you of anyone? Thanks very much for your indulgence, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll move very quickly on to our real singer. And we'll ask Polly to entertain us, please. Polly Beck.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me once again. Lovely to see you all. Happy New Year. Hope it's a healthy one for you all, and I hope you get better soon, June. I'm going to sing one of my favourites, which I'm sure you've all heard me do before, but Alan's written a new rearrangement for it, so we're going to treat you with "You Banks and Braes" again for you this evening. Hope you enjoy. Ye banks and braes of bonny Doon, how can ye bloom sae fresh and fair? How can ye chant, ye little birds, and noisy weary flock? Lord, make my heart the roaring bird that wont through the flowering thorn. Minds me, O departed joys, departed never to return. After I strayed by bonny Doon to see the rose and woodbine twine, and ere the bird sang its love, and fondly sated I, oh mine, relax the bed, I poured a rose, whose sweet upon each thorny tree. But Thank you.
Polly, that was wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. I enjoyed your poems and singing as well. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll have another one for us, Polly.
Oh, well, I could. I don't know.
Of course you could.
What to do? Shall we do? We'll do "Oh Wert Thou in the Cold Blast." There you go.
I'll play.
You play then.
Lovely.
We have to swap round.
Where is it?
On yonder lea, I played it in the angry air. I'd shelter thee, I'd shelter thee. Whereas fortune's bitter storms around thee blow, around thee blow, I still should be thy bosom to share it all, to share it all. Say black and bare, the desert were a paradise. If thou wert there, if thou wert there, were I monarch of the globe, with thee to reign, the brightest jewel in my crown would be my queen, would be my queen. Those of you who have heard me sing this before will know that this is a song that I've been singing since I was about 8 years of age. And it's such an unknown song. I think it's such a shame, and I love to sing it. It's "Oh, Lay Thy Lift in Mine, Lass." Lay thy lift in mine, lass, in mine, lass, in mine, lass, and swear on thy white hand, lass, that thou wilt be mine. A slave to love's unbounded sway, he oft hath wrought me mickle way, but now he's my deadly fate. There's money, alas, has broke my rest, that for a blink I haloed best, but thou art queen within my breast. Forever tarry lay thy love in mine, lass, in mine, lass, in mine, lass, and swear on my white hand, lass, that thou wilt be
Have you got one up the other sleeve before Polly goes, Alan?
Oh, well, I'll sing A Fun Kiss, but it'll be an unaccompanied.
Oh, Polly's. Well,
We can't find the music, and
I
I
can't
can't
find the
play
music.
without music.
A fond kiss, and then we sever. A farewell, alas, forever. Deep in a heart wrung tears I'll pledge thee. Warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Had we never loved so kindly, had we never loved so blindly, never met or never parted, we had ne'er been broken hearted. Fare thee well, thou first and fairest. Fare thee well, thou best and dearest. Thine be ilka joy and treasure, peace, enjoyment, love, and pleasure. A fond kiss, and then we sever. A farewell, alas, forever. Deep in a heart wrung tears I'll pledge thee. Warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee.
Alan, I was taken right back to that morning on the embankment when you sung at the statue. Thanks very much, Alan. That was lovely. So we move away from Greenock Burns Club now to the Glasgow Haggis Club. And next up, we have none other than David Fenner. David, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that wee intro there in the Mother Club, where I have many good friends, as I can see on the screen. And it was obvious why I didn't go on the screen because of the way I'm dressed, and that'll become apparent. As you heard in my introduction, I'm the past president of the Glasgow Haggis Club and current vice president of the Glasgow and District Burns Association. Now, because the Haggis Club is a World Burns Federation affiliated club, this allows the Glasgow Haggis Club members to do other things that are strictly not Burns related. So tonight, I'm going to share with you a poem from another bard, not the bard of Ayrshire, but the bard of the Yukon, Robert Service. And I hear some of you saying to yourselves, who? Well, let me explain. This bard is local to the west of Scotland, having stayed in Kilwinning in Ayrshire and in Glasgow. He attended Hillhead High and Glasgow University for a short time. His great-great-grandfather, Alexander Service, was a distant relative of the Ayrshire bard Robert Burns, and it's said that he visited Service household on a couple of occasions and won one of the seats in the house. Robert W. Service is not so well known in this country, but you will see a monument erected to him in the High Street of Kilwinning in Ayrshire. He later emigrated to Canada to become a cowboy, and then he travelled to Alaska during the gold rush bonanza of 1896. He became the richest poet ever and earned the rightful title of Bard of the Yukon. One of his gold rush poems, Dangerous Dan McGrew, grossed $500,000 in 1907. A lot of money in those days. Now, the poem I'm going to enact to you isn't one of his famous cowboy tales like The Call of the Wild or the Commission of Sam McGee, detailing life in the Yukon during the Gold Rush period. But this poem is all about World War I and the Battle of the Somme, where the poet himself served as a field ambulance officer. Now, 6 years ago, on the 1st of July, was the 100th anniversary of the start of the Battle of the Somme, and as most of you know, it's the bloodiest and most costly in terms of men killed and injured, 500,000 in total. The poem is in a music piece with rather dark overtones, but there's another fine example of the cultural significance and celebration of the haggis. Robert Service wrote this poem while stationed on the Somme, and it's contained in his book of verses, Rhymes of a Red Cross Man, which he completed whilst recovering in Paris from the effects of trench fever. He dedicated the book to his brother, Lieutenant Albert Service, who was killed on the Somme in August. And I, in turn, always like to dedicate this poem to my own grandfather, Private Charles Black, who served on the Somme as a sapper. My middle name is Black, and I'm named after him. My grandfather Charles was gassed on the Somme, and he survived, only to die at a young age with damage to his lungs at 49. Now, the poem deals with all the horrors of the World War I trenches, and I regard it on a par with the great war poems of Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon. This ode relates to the experiences of a couple of soldiers from a Scottish regiment who endured the horrors of living in the trenches with all the mud and the gore, the bombs and the bullets, the killing and dying of men, some of your best pals. Now, it's important to note that with all this death and destruction, there were some things that kept the men going and boosted their morale at times, through all the horror and ugliness of this war. This was when men received letters, gifts, food parcels, etc., from loved ones at home. And at this point, the soldiers' thoughts would drift away from the horrors of war, thinking of those at home and lighter moments. Now, no one can deny that World War I's type of warfare was senseless and extremely dangerous. But by far the most dangerous job of all at the front was to be sent out on the listening patrol. That's where several men would be sent out at night to crawl deep into no man's land and enemy territory, scrambling in all the mud and the gore to find an old German sniper hole or a bomb crater, better known in the poem as a Jack Johnson hole. So named after the Johnson shells that were fired by the British Army in World War I. These men would hunker down in these holes to lay listening devices, which would triangulate the location of the German guns when they fired, and they in turn could also fix their positions and fire back more accurately. They would also spy on the Germans in the trenches, who were sometimes directly underneath them, hopefully to hear what they were saying and maybe ascertain when they were next planning their next attack. The job was carried out by these men despite bullets whizzing past their heads, shells screaming above them, lighting up the night sky, revealing their position. A very high percentage of the listening patrol never made it safely back. It was almost a suicide mission. So with this in mind, I give you the delightful poem of the Haggis of Private McPhee. I hope you like it. Have you heard what my old brother's posted to me? Ach, there makes me homesick, says Private McPhee. And what did you send me, said Private McFun, as he poked his rifle and he blazed at the Hun. It says, a haggis, says Private McPhee. Ach, the broadest big haggis you ever did see. And I think it's the morn when fond memory comes to haggis and whiskey, the birthday of Burns. We'll maun find a dram and we'll go and rest, for the lads and we'll hay a Burns night with the best. Be ready at sundown, snapped Sergeant McCall. I want you two men for the listening patrol. And Private McPhee looked at Private McFun. He says, I'm thinking, my lad, we're confoundedly done. And Private McFun looked at Private McPhee, says, I'm thinking, old chap, it's after we were spree. But up spoke the crony wee Willie McGinn. He said that. Please you've got haggis for me to prepare. And as for the dam, well, if I search the campground, I'm on here happy to just hold it down. Say run, lads, and think till the next that be black, or the haggis that's waiting you when you get back. My, but it was awesome on nobody's land, and the deed they were rotten on every hand, and the rockets like pots candles haunted the sky, and the winds of destruction went shuddering by. There was stilting of bullets and spilling of shells, and the breaching of bombs, and 1,000 death knells. But currying down in a Jack Johnson hole, little faster to all men, or the listening patrol, for sweeter than honey and breakfast again was the thought of that haggis that waited for them. Yet, alas, in their moments of sunniest cheer, calamity often nae squarely near, while the poor talk to the pudding divine, the Huns below them were howking a mine. While the talk cracked to the festivity, the fuse it was burning, aye, burning away. Then sudden a roar, like a thunder of doom, and the hell leap of flame in the to a tomb. Oh, Jock, have you heard it? Said Private McFun. Aye, Geordie, they've got me. I'm fearing I'm done. It's my leg. I'm just thinking, it's up at the knee. You'd best gang and leave me, said Private McPhee. Huh, leave ye I wanna, said Private McFun. Leave ye I canna, for I thought I might run. It's no far I'd gang, it's no muckle I'd see, 'cause I'm blinded. That's what's the matter with me. Private McPhee sadly shaking his head. We bide here for lang. We'll be biding for deed. And yet, Geordie lad, I could gang real content. Oh, if I tasted that haggis my old mother sent. That's droll, says McFun. You've just spoke at my mind. Ken, it's a terrible thing to be blind. And yet it's no that can bitters my lot. It's missing that broad muckle haggis you've got. For a while they were silent. Then up once again spoke Private McPhee with he winced in pain. He says, and I shouldn't miss it between you and me. We've legs for to run and we've eyes for to see. You lend me your shanks, I'll lend you my sight, and we'll both hear a kiteful of haggis the night. Oh, the sky it was dour like and drooping a wee, and Private McFun grabbed at Private McPhee, and the gore and the cushion and playing the gun, and Private McPhee got at Private McFun. He says, look out for the corpses. Oh, there may be no deed. Hold on, there's a muckle big gator ahead. Look out, there's a sapper. We'll be haying a count. A store shell, for God's sake. Don't lad on your bout. Bear after the right, or you're doing just fine. For this night's finished, on haggis we'll dine. There was death and destruction on every hand. There was havoc and horror in nobody's land. And the shell flickered down their crump and their glare. And the aimless wee bullets were in the air. Yet on they went staggering, hurrying boon, till the stuck and the clock go a maxim pep boon. And the legs of McFun, they were sturdy and stood, with McPhee on his back, get a bonny look out. On, my brave lad, they're no far to the goal. I can hear the bra swearing of Sergeant McCall, but strength has its limits, and Private McFun, we're serving a curse, fell his length on the ground, and Private McPhee shouts in his ear, just think of the haggis. I can smell it from here. It's gushing with juice. It's embalming the air. It's steaming for us, and we're just about there. Private McFun answers, damn it, old chap. For the sake of that haggis, I'll gang to a drap. So he gets on his feet with a heave and a strain, and on they go staggering in passion and pain, the flare and the glare, and the fury and peace. How you think we've just taken, oh hell on a lease, and on they go reeling in a pitiful plight. Now someone is shouting away on the right, now someone is running, now they can hear sound like a prayer and a sound like a cheer, and swift through the flash and the crash and the din, the lads of the Healings are bringing them in. They're basically wounded, but is it no droll how they rave about haggis, said Sergeant McCall. And up on the line comes wee Willie McNair, and they're running by his greeting sincere. He says, I just lifted it out of the pot. It lay there all steaming, all savouring, hot, and suddenly I ducked at the flash of a shell, and it dropped on the haggis and dinged it to hell. My, but the lads were fair taken aback, and suddenly the order was past the attack, and up to the trenches like lions they leapt, and on through the night like a torrent they swept, on to the bayonets thrusting before, on to the foe their rush and a roar, and while to the welcome their battle cry rang, and down on the bosses like tigers they sprang. There wasn't a man but had death in his ee, for the thought of the haggis of Private McPhee.
David, as ever, absolutely wonderful. And every time I hear you doing that, I hope that there's going to be a happy ending this time, but no, David, thanks very
That's
much.
the reason why I was on screen, because I didn't want folks saying, what the hell's he dressed up like that for? I was sitting just to the side of the screen, and I've been enjoying what's been going on already. So nice to see all my friends here. Happy New Year to you all.
Well done, David. Thank you. Next up, back to the Greenock Club, we have past president June Forbes. June.
On Monday, Ian White phoned me up to say, June, we're having a wee night on Thursday night, and would you do something? And I said, oh, well, he had heard about this wee poem of mine that I'd done once before, and he said, would you do it? And I said, yeah, but I thought, I didn't realize I was going worldwide. I'm even going to Canada, London, even Greenock. So this is wonderful tonight. It's lovely to see you all. And please excuse my COVID voice. I'm still recovering. I had another positive blinking test last night, but still, I'm feeling fine. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here tonight. Well, can I get round to this then? Many years ago, I visited Gatehouse of Fleet. Used to do it on a regular basis. When I was there, I always attended the church. The church there is called Anworth and Girton. I remember on several occasions I met Bill Hewitt, who's a past president of Greenock Burns Club and of course past moderator of the Church of Scotland. He used to holiday in his caravan, which was down in that district, and he always attended the services. So this little poem, I don't know the author. Sorry, Ian. Ian asked me if I could do a wee thing about the author, but I've got no knowledge of it at all. The only thing I know about it, it was printed on the back of the order of a service at Gatehouse. And that day, it was Communion Day, and I kept it thinking how true. Well, I see Willie Dix here tonight. And can I tell you, Willie, I've got my own glasses tonight, and I don't need to borrow yours, because the one and only time I ever have said this was at New Cumnock, and I didn't have any glasses. And I got one lot, I couldn't see a thing. The poor guy that gave me them, can't remember his name. It was Ian somebody. You know him, it's a good singer. You know who I mean? Well, he gave me his and I said to him, your eyesight's very bad because I can't see through your glasses. However, Willie Dick gave me his and I've used it. So by the way, David Brown and I joke about his preambles. I think I should stop preambling. Is that a word? Preambling? I don't think so. But however, what are you saying?
It is now, June.
It is now, yes. So this to my little poem. Only on Communion Day, a poor wee kitmouse, all forlorn, its furry coat fair sairly worn, sank down upon its bony knees and prayed for a wee bit cheese. The tears ran down its wee thin cheeks, but nane could hear the saddest squeaks that drifted on the cold nicht air, till whiles it couldn't pray nae mair. Syne Dale cam, the kirk bells rang, the door swung open wi' a bang. Communion Day had come on by, with wine and plates o' bread piled high. That wee moose lay still as death and watched it all with bated breath, then thought, if I keep offy quate, a bite might just faff the plate. And so it gazed as Rooney went, then just as though was heaven sent, what landed richt upon his head, but 2 big lumps o' communion bread. The staff o' life lay on the flare, the bounteous answer to his prayer. Just as he thought, it looks fell dry, aebody cout some wine forby. The wee moose stoated up the aisle, wearing sick a toothy, boozy smile. The folk stopped singing, fair aghast, to see a drunken moose walk past. The organist fell off her chair. The minister could only stare to see this drunken, sinful moose cavorting in the sacred house. At last it staggered up the nave, then turned and gave a happy wave. I ken noo when it's time to pray. Ye only date on Communion Day.
And thanks very much. That was absolutely super. Absolutely super.
I've got another one, and
Brilliant.
I've got another one here. As you'll see, I can't memorize. I'm not at my age, and I'm not even going to try. But this one is, and it may refer to me. I don't think so. You judge for yourself. It's called In Denial. I look in the mirror, and what do I see? There's somebody there who's not really me. I haven't got marks and lines on my face. My eyes are not tired. No, not a trace. I look in the mirror to tidy my hair. And would you believe that lady's still there? I look in shop windows to look at the clothes, but she's there again in that old lady pose. I'll show that lady she's no place with me. I'll put on my makeup and try to be me. I don't do old, and she's an imposter. I'll get dressed up and hope that I've lost her. I went in a shop to look for a dress. I wanted it glamorous and smart to impress. I don't think I'm strange or hard to please, but all of the dresses were down past my knees. I couldn't have shrunk. I've never been tall. Those dresses weren't right. I've never been that small. I know what I'll do. I'll go elsewhere. A charity shop. I'll find something there. If you see that lady I told you about, don't be mistaken. Don't have any doubt. It is really me, so let it be told. I'm only rehearsing in case I get old.
Jane, that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And if you don't mind me saying so, really, really funny and very appropriate. Dead right. Dead right. Next up, folks, we have from Glasgow Haggis Club again, Martin Cassidy. I'm not going to say what his role in the Haggis Club is because I get my wrist slapped privately by message for getting David Venard wrong. So Martin Cassidy is something to do with Glasgow Haggis Club, I think. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's really lovely to be in all your company. And can I congratulate you first, Mr. President, on your library collection at the back of you? It's either that or you've got a very unique wallpaper selection. So well done to you. Congratulations. It's lovely to see Alan Beck. And I've been on Alan Beck with Zoom and Alan Beck a number of times. But I always found that his wife was in the background. And one time she had a notepad and she was scribbling away. And I says, can I speak to Polly? And he says, she's a bit busy. And then the next time I was on Zoom with Alan, Polly was in the background. She had her easel out and her canvas and she was painting. And I says, can I speak to Polly? He says, no, sorry. Polly always doodles all the day. Anyway, what I was going to do was I was thinking about, I need to change my title bar. I'm not sex on legs. I'm legs on zegs. Because I keep sliding on the ice. But I'm going to give you a wee winter tale. It's called A Frozen Wife. Snug in your bed in a winter's night, for wind and rain you're happy ticht. You count a ween elusive sheep, and then you're drapping off to sleep. Then all at once, your peace is shattered, your random thoughts are rudely scattered. The wife crawls in for fit to heed, cold like she's something dead. Her frozen feet and legs and knees, like some fish for the polar seas. And what I durna say in verse, worst of the lot, are frozen earth. To signify her fond affection, she wriggles over in your direction and plants that frozen icy hummock smack bang in the middle of your stomach. With anguish gasp and drawing breath, you shrink away as if for death. But she keeps wriggling till she's captured that wee warm bit you've lain in rapture. And though you know you're sure to perish, you promised I to love and cherish with kindly thoughts and deeds superior. I thought that lassie's called posterior. But thank the Lord that by the law, you've only got one wife to thaw. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Aye, well, what I could do is obviously you're a retired school teacher, is that correct, from Govan? And English is a very hard subject,
right.
isn't it? English is very hard to learn. So as an educationalist of great note myself, what do you mean you don't believe me? I'm going to teach you a wee bit about why English is so hard to learn. So we'll begin with box. The plural is boxes, but the plural of ox is oxen, not oxes. One fowl is a goose and two are called geese, yet the plural of moose is never called meese. You may find a lone mouse or a house full of mice, but the plural of house is houses, not highs. The plural of man is always men, but the plural of pan is never 10. If I speak of a foot and you show me 2 feet, and I give you a book, would a pair be a beak? If one is a tooth and a whole set of teeth, why shouldn't 2 booths be called teeth? If the singular is this and the plural is these, should the plural of kiss be ever called kiss? We speak of a brother and also of brethren, but also we say mother, but we never say brethren. Then to the masculine pronouns are he, his, and him, but imagine the feminine, she, shis, and shim. Thanks, Mr. President.
Martin, thank you very much. Your own inimitable self, I would hazard. Next up, from Greenock, we have Mr. Preamble himself, David Brown.
Thank you, Ian. And well done, June. Enjoyed your poems and your preambles. I hope you will enjoy my selection. Last year, as we commemorated the bicentenary of the birth of Colin Ray Brown, we learned how he had raised funds for statues of Robert Burns and Highland Mary, and also that he had initiated the plans for the memorial to Sir William Wallace, which culminated in the magnificent monument on the Abbey Craig at Stirling. Wallace was an inspiration to Robert Burns. Burns wrote the two first books which I ever read and which gave me more pleasure than any two I ever read since were The Life of Hannibal and The History of Sir William Wallace. He went on, the story of Wallace poured a Scottish prejudice in my veins, which will boil along there until the floodgates of life shut in eternal rest. There are many references to Wallace in Burns' poetry. Probably one of the best known is in Scots which, as June recently reminded me, refers to the Battle of Bannockburn, which was in 1314. This is where Burns puts into poetry the words which King Robert the Bruce might have used in addressing his troops. So I'll recite that now. Scots, wha hae wha Wallace bled, Scots wham Bruce has often led, welcome to your gory bed, or to victory. News the day and news the hour, see the front of battle lower, see approach proud Edward's power, chains and slavery. Wha would be a traitor knave? Wha would fill a coward's grave? Wha sae base as be a slave? Let him turn and flee. Wha for Scotland's king and law, freedom's sword will strongly draw. Free man stand or free man fall, let him follow me. By oppression's woes and pains, by your sons in servile chains, we will drain our dearest veins, but they shall be free. Lay the proud usurper low, tyrants fall in every foe, liberties in every blow. Let us do or die. It was 9 years before, thank you, 9 years before the Battle of Bannockburn, in 1305, that Wallace was betrayed, captured, and executed. In 2005, for the 7th centenary of the execution, Edwin Morgan wrote a commemorative poem for the event. Morgan was one of the foremost Scottish poets of the 20th century. He was a professor at Glasgow University, and after he retired, he became appointed as the first poet laureate of Glasgow, and later was named as the first Makar, or poet for all of Scotland. He died at the age of 90 in 2010. So, Lines for Wallace by Edwin Morgan. Is it not better to forget? It is better not to forget. Betrayal, never to be forgotten. Vindictiveness, never to be forgotten. Triumphalism, never to be forgotten. Body parts displayed at different points of the compass. Between hanging and hacking, the worst, the disemboweling. Blood raised in him, fervent. Blood raced in him, fervent. Blood raised in him. Forever fervent in its death. For Burns was right to see it was not only on the field that Scots would follow this man, with blades and war horns, sharp and shrill, but with brains and books where the idea of liberty is impregnated and impregnates. Oh, that too is sharp and shrill, and some cannot stand it, and some would never allow it, and some would rather die for the regulated music of Zamyatin's polyhymnia, where nothing can go wrong. Cinema sophisticates, fizzed with disgust at the crudities Braveheart held out to them. Over the cheeks of some, were they less sophisticated? A tear slipped unbidden. Oh yes, it did. I saw it. The power of Wallace cuts through art, but art calls attention to it, badly or well. In your room, in the street, even, by God, if it came to it on a battlefield, think about it. Remember him. After Wallace was captured, thank you. After Wallace was captured, he was held for a time at Dumbarton Castle until orders came from Edward, King of England, that he had to be taken without delay to London. So Wallace, with his captors, would have crossed the Clyde from Dumbarton Castle to a landing spot near to Finlayston before heading further south. Finlayston, of course, became home of the Earls of Glencairn, and it was the 14th Earl who was a good friend of Robert Burns. He helped him to raise funds for an Edinburgh edition of his poetry, and he introduced him to many influential people. However, at the age of 41, the Earl took ill with tuberculosis. He went to Portugal in the hope that the warmer climate might help his condition, but unfortunately he deteriorated and returned, but he died on the way back shortly after landing at Falmouth in Cornwall, and that is where he is buried. When Robert Burns learned of the death of the Earl, he was utterly devastated, and he wrote for him this lament. The Lament for James, Earl of Glencairn, by Robert Burns. The wind blew hollow frae the hills. By fits the sun's departing beam looked on the fading yellow woods that waved o'er Lugar's winding stream. Beneath a craggy steep, a bard, laden with years and meikle pain, in loud lament bewailed his lord, whom death had all untimely ta'en. He leaned him to an ancient ache, whose trunk was mouldering down with years. His locks were bleached white with time. His hoary cheek was wet with tears. And as he touched his trembling harp, and as he tuned his doleful sang, the winds, lamenting through their caves to echo, bore the notes alang. Ye scattered birds that faintly sing the relics of the vernal choir, ye woods that shed on a' the winds the honours of the aged year, a few short months, and glad and gay again ye'll charm the ear and ee, but nocht in all revolving time shall gladness bring again to me. I am a bending aged tree that long has stood the wind and rain, but now has come a cruel blast, and my last hold of earth is gane. Nay leaf of mine shall greet the spring, nay summer sun exalt my bloom, but I maun lie before the storm, and others plant them in my room. I've seen sae mony changeful years. On earth I am a stranger grown. I wander in the ways of men, alike unknowing and unknown. Unheard, unpitied, unrelieved, I bear alane my load of care, for silent, low on beds of dust lie all that would my sorrows share. And last, the sum of all my griefs, my noble master lies in clay. The flower of all our barons bold, his country's pride, his country's stay. In weary being now I pine, for all the life of life is dead, and hope has left my aged ken, on forward wing forever fled. Awake, thy last sad voice, my harp, that voice of woe and wild despair. Awake, resound thy latest lay, then sleep in silence evermore. And thou, my last, best, only friend, that fillest an untimely tomb, accept this tribute from the bard thou brought from fortune's murkest gloom. In poverty's low barren vale, thick mists obscure involve me round, though oft I cast the wistful eye, nae ray of fame was to be found. Thou foundst me, like the morning sun that melts the fogs in limpid air, and friendless bard and rustic song became alike thy fostering care. Oh, why has worth so short a date? When villains ripen grey with time, must thou, the noble, generous, great, fall in bold manhood's hardy prime? Why did I live to see that day? A day to me so full of woe. Oh, had I met the mortal shaft that laid my benefactor low. The bridegroom may forget the bride was made his wedded wife yestreen. The monarch may forget the crown that on his head at hour has been. The mother may forget the child that smiles so sweetly on her knee, but I'll remember thee, Glencairn, and all that thou hast done for me. I'd like to finish with a short poem of Burns, just to change the tone a wee bit. Burns only lived for about 5 years after the death of the Earl, and in the year before he died, he had an agonizing toothache, about which he wrote a poem. The poem ends with, "Gie a' the fays of Scotland's wheel a towmon's toothache," which you might not follow if I don't tell you that what Burns is saying is, give all the foes or enemies of the welfare of Scotland 12 months toothache. So the address to the toothache by Robert Burns. I ban upon thy venom stang that shoots my tortured gums alang, and through my lug gies mony a twang wi' knowing vengeance, tearing my nerves wi' bitter pang like racking engines. Oh, doon my beard the slavers trickle, I cast the wee stools out the mucklers round the fire the Haverels keckle to see me lout. Well, raving man, I wish a heckle were their doubt. When fevers burn, or ague freezes, rheumatic snaw, or colic squeezes, our neighbours sympathise to ease us with pitying moan. But thee, thou hell of all diseases, they mock our groan. Oh, the numerous human duels, ill hairs, daft bargains, cutty stools, or worthy friends raked to the mules, sad sight to see, the tricks of knaves, or fash of fools, thou bear'st degree. Where'er that place be priest or hell, where all the tones of misery yell, and ranked plagues their numbers tell in dreadful row, thou toothache surely bear'st the bell abin them all. Oh, thou grim mischief-making chiel, that gars the notes of discord squeal, till daft mankind would dance a reel in gore a shoe thick. Gie a' the fays of Scotland's wheel a towmon's toothache. Thank you.
David, I swear I could almost feel the pain of toothache there. That was terrific. And before the lament for James Earl of Glencairn, on a personal level, thank you. Thank you. I just love that particular poem. That was super. Thank you, David. Alan, do we have something from Henry?
Yes, we are. As you know, Mr. President, Henry is the current president of the Robert Burns World Federation, and he's actually Greenock Burns Club's newest member, having joined just in the wake of the Colin Ray Brown celebrations. He very much wanted to be here this evening, but I'm afraid he had an emergency doctor's appointment, and he's also preparing for a meeting of the Robert Burns Association of North America, which takes place this evening in the States. I don't know what time it is there at the minute, probably mid-afternoon. So he sends his best wishes to everybody here tonight, and best wishes to you, hoping for a successful evening for you, Mr. President.
Thanks very much, Alan, and thanks indeed to President Henry. I had been told that he was an accomplished accordion player, and he certainly demonstrated that there for us. It took me back actually to when I was a wee boy. I used to go with my family every Saturday to my granny's for my tea, and my dad and my granddad and my uncles, they would be up from Carpton Street on Ann Street visiting one of the cafes up there, and they would come in just round about 6 o'clock in time for the football to come on the radio. And this was the fount of all knowledge, because apart from the red and the pink and the green Saturday papers, there was no television in my granny's house, or indeed ours. So that's where we got our news. But the point of the story is, following immediately on from the football was the Scottish country dance programme. And that took me right back to sitting in my granny's kitchen all of these years ago. And I tell you, the folks I was listening to weren't any better in the box than Henry is. That was terrific, wasn't it, folks? Absolutely terrific. From the sublime to the ridiculous, from Calgary to Skermerley, I give you Jimmy Law.
Thanks, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
Excellent night. Well done, everyone. Thoroughly enjoying this here tonight. Sorry it's not on face-to-face, but those that obviously can't make it will be delighted to be on Zoom. I was on a Zoom with the Haggis Club as Martin, Mark and David. Perhaps some others will testify 2 nights ago. And I gave him this wee piece, and Willie Dick will be delighted that I've got a wee preamble to it. Willie hates a preamble. I became interested in Robert Burns about 27 years ago. An old man in the village had given me a cassette tape, and on it was a Scots verse followed by a song sung in English, then a Scots verse, another song in English. And I listened to this, and I just absolutely loved it, but I never knew what it was, never knew who it was about or anything, just enjoyed it so much. A few years later, my auntie had died, and I lifted the Burns book down from the shelf, and it fell open at the page, The Jolly Beggars, Love and Liberty. I said, oh, that's Robert Burns. Now, I got no Robert Burns in primary or secondary school, and that kindled an interest in me of finding out more, both about Burns and also this piece, because the piece on the tape only was half of what was in the cantata. So I sent off to, it was a BBC tape. So if anyone has any input from the archives of the BBC, I'd love to get the complete works of this recording for myself and for yourselves. So yeah, I sent off to Scots and they sent me their version of the whole piece, which I learned the recitation for. And I thought, we've got magnificent singers in our local community, the large Gaelic choir, the Greenock Gaelic choir. Isabel will know Elspeth Howie very well, Colin Fisher, Frank and Pauline McCamley, so Bill Armstrong. So I put on a stage show, and with serving wenches and dugs up on the stage, pheasants hanging up, and we acted it out with great gusto. And it was an absolute knockout, and we did it quite a number of times. But that, sadly, some of these people have gone. But I'll give you a wee taste of what I heard on the tape. When light leaves bestrow the yard, or wavering like the bocky bird, be dim, cold, boreas blast, when hailstains drive with bitter skite, and infant frosts begin to bite, in hoary cranrach dressed, ye nicht at een, a merry core o' randy gangrel buddies, and Poosie Nancy's held the floor, to drink their oraduddies, wi' quaffing and laughing, they ranted and they sang, wi' jumping and thumping, the very girdle rang. First, neath the fire, in auld rid rags, yin sat, weel braced wi' mealie bags, and knapsack all in order. His doxy lay within his arms, wi' the scrubby and blankets warm. She blinket on her sojer, and aye she gazed the tosy drab, the tither, skelp and kiss, while she hods up her greedy gab, just like an almost dish. Ilk crack still, did crack still, just like a codger's whip. Then swaggin' and staggin', he roars this ditty up. And the next bit is a song with the drums, absolutely great. And then it moves on to, he ended and the keybar shook, abin the chorus roar, while frightened ratins backward look and seek the ben must bore. A fairy fiddler for the nuke, he skirls out, encore! Then up arose the martial chuck and laid the loud uproar. And then it's a song, recitation song, onto, I heard it the other day in the piece which has been put out, John Highlandman. They've gone and hanged John Highlandman. And it comes to the end, there's 80 people in the hall on these nights when we put on the production. And the last bit, the words were up there on the stage, a fig for those by law protected, liberty's a glorious feast, courts for cowards were erected, churches built to please the priest. And the whole hall was absolutely buzzing with everyone singing that. And that piece by Robert Burns, to me, is the best piece that Burns ever wrote. Some will say Tam O'Shanter, not to me. If you get a hold of the cantata Love and Liberty, the Jolly Beggars, it's absolutely outstanding. So I'm sure that with the good singers we've got in the company, even here tonight, and others in the Beacon, that could be certainly put on along with the other stuff. Let's have a Scots night for the Greenock, the Mother Club, and we'll maybe do that. Over to yourself, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. The night is yet young. I can't believe you've not got another one there for us.
Oh, aye, got another one. This was written by a man mentioned on Tuesday night as well, W.D. Cocker from Strathblane, one of my favourite poets after Burns. Service, he's up there to me with Robert Service, David. This is the story of Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt. How does it start here? Why? A canny body, Lot they called him, dwelt in the wicked town of Sodom. He thought things were gay and eerie, to bide man neighbours, say calm steery. The Lord someday for their misdeeds might burn the place, abin their heads. No, nae man likes a fascist flitting. Lot tell his wife, they maun be quitting. Quo she, but here we're gay and cruise, where'll we get a better hoose? I ken the neighbours are sair sinners, aye, drinking drams and backing winners. Keep to yoursel is my advice, but here we stop, can we be wise? They argy-bargied even on, gin Lot was doer, the wife was thrown. The mair he threeped, the mair she grat, and says, I win a steer, that's flat. But Lot do lose the truth there lang, the Lord gave them a hint to gang. In fear and haste they took the gate, nae swither knew, nae time to wait, and scarcely had they left the town when thunderbolts come papping down. An earthquake gaed volcanic sneezes, and Sodom, sign, get up like blazes. Running, pecking, faster, faster, Lot ran like stew frae the disaster. But Lot's wife, mindful o' her hame, and all her bits of things in flame, keeked back, gae Rufu at the low, and broke Stephen's judgment on her pow. Sair troubled for her waesome thought, o in a glyph she turned to sought, And there she stood, a stooky set, a monument of vain regret. Believe this story ilk a jot, or take it way a pinch o' salt.
Brilliant as ever, Jimmy. Thank you very much. And now for our ultimate act, we come back to Greenock again and to Sandy Reddy. Now, Sandy is well known to all of you, a past president of the club, minutes secretary for many years, and recently the recipient of a certificate from the Robert Burns World Federation to mark his significant contribution to the world of Burns and indeed the Mother Club. Sandy, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Mr. President. You mentioned the Saturday night and the Scottish dance music. You can still hear it. Radio Scotland, Saturday night. I listen to it when I'm doing the dinner dishes, and it's really good. And on the Sunday night, the same person has a request program, and you can email in or phone in, and they do not necessarily Scottish dance music, but all sorts of songs and daft wee songs like the Midges, and all that. It's good to hear all these great Scots songs. However, Robert Burns was a great poet that we know of and love, and he lived in very revolutionary times. During his lifetime, there was the industrial and agricultural revolution, which influenced him in his farm work. There was also across the Atlantic, the American Revolution, or the War of Independence. And closer to home, across the English Channel, there was the French Revolution. Now, this French Revolution posed a possible threat to Britain. So Burns joined the Dumfries Volunteers to try and protect any possible invasion. And in 1795, he wrote a very patriotic song, Does Haughty Gaul Invasion Threat, because of this rumoured invasion of Britain by Napoleon's forces. Now, the whole country was put in alert in case Napoleon decided or was successful in invading Britain. And up in Greenock, we were particularly warned to watch out because we were a port, to watch out for French ships coming and spies coming ashore. And they were instructed that to keep a watchful eye out, and if they found any French spies, they were to be immediately captured and hung down at the square. Now, down at Cathcart Square, you'll see a horseshoe, and that horseshoe commemorates the place where the green oak tree grew, and from which any possible French spies were to be hung. And in fact, one dark moonless night, they did catch a spy and duly hung from the branches of the old oak tree. However, in the morning, when they came to cut the corpse down, they discovered that it was a monkey dressed up in a French sailor's outfit. What an embarrassment, especially as there's great rivalry between Greenock and Port Glasgow. So whenever anybody from Greenock ventured up to Port Glasgow, they were barracked and embarrassed by shouts of, "Who hung the monkey?" There was no reply to this for the Greenock lads until something happened. There was a fault developed in the Port Glasgow town bell. Now, Burns didn't write a poem about this, but one of our local poets did, a chap called Davy Bowie. Now, Davy Bowie was a moulder in the Caledonian Foundry. He was one of the Bothy boys that met in the Albert Hotel down in Gourock and they had great times studying Scottish poems. And Davy Bow was a very accomplished humorous poet. And this is his story of what happened to the Port Glasgow Bell. This is a story about the port. That's a tune where I've heard tell, though I'm not quite sure of the truth of it, but they say they built a bell. Now the bell was painted 3 coats thick. Oh, it looked a bonny thing. They hung it in a belfry high. Then the fun, it wouldn't ring. The harder they pulled upon the rope, the deadlier was the clang. Oh, I do, the provost says. There's something gay for rang. I wonder, could it be the paint that's caused this awful din? To waste a bonny bell like that would be a grievous sin. And more than that, the noise it made in Greenock could be heard. Ah, good portmen that's stonning here, say no to them a word. For if I thought I'd heard of this, I'd jump into the harbour. No need for that. We'll boil the bell, says Bailey, donkey barber. So, in the dark, that very night, when all the world was still, the painted bell, sae braw and bright, was pulled to Birkmiles Mill. They had a tank, so I've been told, with hod sae big a bell, and underneath the lit of fire, you'd no see out o' hell. Day in, day out, the bell was built, the paint, it harder clung, the provost, near distraught with rage, said the painter wanted hung. Oh, don't hang the painter, Barber cried. He's pawned my watch and chain. We'll burn the paint and scrape it off. That bell will ring again. A squad was started there and then, with lamps and files and scrapers, but little did they ken the news had carried o' their capers. A hodder on in Hamilton's, who travelled frae Cartstike, o'erheard the news at dinner time. All Greenock knew that night. And so we know who built the bell, none other than old Donkey. But they never found the bugger who in Greenock hung the monkey.
Absolutely wonderful, Sandy. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, there's an old saying that a volunteer is worth 10 pressed men. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to our volunteer, Phil, who is going to entertain us. Hi, Phil. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Phil Smith, and I'm the secretary of the Robert Burns Club for St. Andrew's Society of Sarasota in Florida. I would like to read one of my own poems tonight, if that's okay with you. It's a poem about the island of Islay, which when I visited many years ago, I was enthralled with. And I wrote this poem. It's called Remember Islay. Remember the croft, solitary, under the shadow of heaven, and the thistle guarding closely in the eve, and the smoky peat haunting our senses, burning slowly within the confines of the great. And the dancing amber hues caressing the shadows, forging the ancient stone kindly to our touch, and we enveloped in the cloth of many colours, spun solely to ward off the evening chill. And we sat gazing into the eyes of yesterday, drowning in the splendour of the poetry in the soul, eyes so dark, reflecting ancient wisdom, ours only for an instant, but infinite and surreal. Remember distant pipes lamenting love departed, muted chords of sorrow echoing through the glen, haunting ancient ballads ebbing with the dusk, swallowed by the mist on heather-covered hills. And we, born of this land which our birthright gifted us, embraced the glorious sacrifice of souls long gone, and we, living the lives incarnate of every warrior bold, gladly bore the consequence of battles won and lost. And remember, we pledged our honour to all kings of our crown, and graciously we toasted our country and its fate. And then we paid homage to the water and the earth, and finally we drank of the pride and the malt. Thank you.
Thank you,
If
Phil.
you'd like,
Thank you, Phil. It was nice just to sit back there and listen to the words and paint the picture in my mind, and it was very, very, very effective. Thank you.
thank
You got
you.
something else for us?
Well, if you'd like to hear a wee bit of Burns, I'd be happy to oblige.
Yes, please.
My favourite, well, one of the thousands of favourites that I have of Robert Burns is Mary Morrison. He wrote this to a young lady whose name was Alison Begbie, and Begbie doesn't really rhyme very well with a lot of words in the English vocabulary, so he changed her name to Mary Morrison. O Mary, at thy window be, it is the wished, the trysted hour, those smiles and glances let me see, that makes the miser's treasure poor. How blithely would I bide the stour, a weary slave frae sun to sun, could I the rich reward secure, the lovely Mary Morrison. Yestreen, when to the trembling spring the dance gaed through the lighted hall, to thee my fancy took its wing, I sat, but neither heard nor saw. Though this was fair and that was braw, and yon the toast o' the tune, I sighed and said among them all, oh, ye arena Mary Morrison. O Mary, canst thou wreck his peace, who for thy sake would gladly die? Or canst thou break that heart of his, whose only thought is loving thee? If love for love thou willna gie, at least be pity to me shown. A thought ungentle canna be the thought of Mary Morrison.
That too, for me, was very evocative, and perhaps for some others here, whenever I hear that poem, or indeed the song, I think in our late past president, George Bryden, who used to sing it so often and so very well. So thanks for that, Phil. And speaking of song, Alan, as in Beck, would you be able to round off the evening for us in song?
Mr. President, I could, but to round off the evening, I think there's really only one thing that we can sing, and that would be Auld Lang Syne. I'm really happy to start it off, but what I think we should do is to get everyone to unmute. I mean, I'm not saying it'll be pretty, but it'll be nicely emotional if we hear everyone unmuted with it.
Let's go for it then, eh?
Here we go.
Yes.
Acquaintance forgot and never acquaintance
Here's a hand here's a
Oh, very good. I like it. Very, very good.
Hey.
That's right.
Well, Alan, pity it wasn't. Jean, our Senior Vice President, vote of thanks, please.
Mr. President, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, where do I start? Robert Burns and other Scots poets, well, we had it all tonight. Starting off with Ian, our president, on Matt McGinn. Didn't know you could sing, Ian. Well done. And also well done for putting this night together, Ian. Fantastic. Thank you. David Bernard on Robert's service, Bard of the Yukon, Stories of World War I, Haggis of Private McKee. Fantastic. Thank you, David. Jimmy Law, his preamble on his extract from the Jolly Beggars cantata. Scots night up for that, Jimmy, at the Beacon. That's given me food for thought for our next year's session. And W.D. Cocker, Lot's wife. I've heard you say that many a times, and I've seen you use your packet of salt many a times. June Forbes, Gatehouse of Fleet Church, was her preamble. Only on Communion Day, the wee moose. And then In Denial. Thank you, June. David Brown, his preamble, Hannibal and Wallace. Scots wi' hay, Edward Morgan, Lines for Wallace. Lament for James Earl of Glencairn. And then Address to the Toothache. Fantastic, David, well done. Then Martin Cassidy, Sex and Legs, he thinks. Something to do with the Haggis Club. Well, Senior Vice President of the Haggis Club and past President of Alloway Burns Club. Martin gave us his Frozen Wife poem, and then Why is English so hard to learn? That's a new one for us, Martin. Thanks very much. Alan and Polly Beck, well, what can I say? Icons of Greenock Burns Club, the Mother Club. Fantastic, Alan. Thank you very much. And to Polly. Henry Kearney, all the way from Canada. I thought we'd have seen him in person, but we'll take his wee film, his variety of his tunes, and he sent his best wishes to us. Thank you, Henry. Sandy Reddy, Robert Burns, his preamble, which I didn't know about. I don't come from Greenock, but I didn't know why that horseshoe was there. And now I do, outside Custom House, the green oak tree, where the green oak tree grew. And for French spies get hung there. And then the monkey. That was a funny bit. His Davy Bowie PG Bell. Thank you, Sandy. Very good. Then our volunteer Phil Smith from Florida on her Isle of Islay, written by herself. Fantastic, Phil. and her Mary Morrison rendition. Well, it only leads me to say thank you so much to all of you for tuning in tonight for our Zoom. And without you, we wouldn't have had a Zoom. So thank you all so much from all over Canada, America, London, Skermally. Fantastic. Thank you all so very much. And I'll hand you back over to Ian, the President.
I would just like to say we're the Canadians, but right now we're down in Florida. And everything that we have heard tonight is so familiar and so beloved by us both. We know Matt McGinn, we know all the Robert Service. We did the Jolly Beggars at Urbana. Our whole Burns Club did this a few years ago. Everything about Robert Burns, everything, listening to the Scottish twang has just made our day. And thank you so much. It was wonderful. I come from Port Glasgow, and Brickmeyer's Mill is part of my growing up. So it was wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, that's
If you're from Port Glasgow, do you know who hung Monkey?
I'm not telling you.
Ian, can I tell that lady my mother worked in Brickmeyer's Mill?
Oh, so did my mother. So did my mother. Yeah. Yep. On the sail loft.
And I went to school in Port Glasgow.
You did. Me too. But then I went to Greenock High for 2 whole years.
I gave up at Port Glasgow.
Well, that was just wonderful from 2 snowbirds in Florida. Thanks very much indeed. And my big brother worked in Brickmeyer's Mill as well in the export department. So there we go. Listen, folks, my own personal thanks as president of the club for everyone who contributed, everyone who was online tonight. And it's a funny thing, but it does create a wee bit of atmosphere to have a good number of faces looking at us. Alan has his finger in the air, which must mean something.
Mr. President, it might be an opportune moment just to tell our visitors this evening that not living in Greenock is no bar to becoming a member of the world's oldest Burns Club. And in fact, I said that Henry was our newest member. In fact, when you heard Phil earlier on with her own fabulous poem, Phil only joined the club just about a month before Henry. And of course, Phil is down in Florida all the time. Folks, you can join online for the absolute peach of a bargain of £25. Join online and become a member of the world's oldest Burns Club. I thought that might be an opportune moment to say, especially when we've just got rave reviews all the way from Florida.
Alan, how true and how appropriate can we leave you with that unashamed sales pitch from another club? Hope to see you again sometime. This evening has been one of the highlights thus far of my presidency, and I thank you all for that. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Vote of thanks to the chair.
Oh, thank you.